I suppose it is, John. I'm looking very forward to seeing what this Chen gets up to this game. I think a buff you didn't really talk about with the Chen is I believe he got +2 damage, right? +2 base damage, which does matter, right? Like a hero like Chen does tend to struggle to harass you. I think the +2 damage is quite significant during the laning stage. And like you said, with Penitence, it's a lot of amp going on here from the Chen. Motivate.Trust, not to be dissuaded, they'll go into the Necrophos themselves now. Who's this really countering, though? Like, it does a decent job against Tiny. I suppose it's very annoying for the LC. I suppose it's more of a fact that there's not really a counter towards the Necrophos this game, it seems like. Not yet, anyway.
Not directly. I feel like the Lena's a pretty good counterpoint to a Necrophos, though. Like, sure, Ghost Shroud saves you from the right clicks, but it amps up her magic damage. And even amps up the Tiny's magic damage as well. So if you use that spell wrongly, you can just get bursted down by Avalanche Toss, by LSA, Laguna, and Dragon Slave. It does give them a good option of bursting down a hero, and maybe they're just preempting something like a Spectre that could slide through. Maybe they're worried about the Spectre coming out. Or they could be sending a message. It's like, you guys took the Necrophos, London, have a great time. We'll show you how Masteros does it. It could just be a confidence play for Motivate.Trust.
Well, I'm intrigued as well, because I believe Guardian Greaves got buffed, right? Like, the cost of the recipe went down significantly. So, and I say significantly, I believe it was 100 gold. So, I was thinking, as soon as I read that buff to Guardian Greaves, I thought to myself, maybe Necrophos will become more popular, because it does tend to enjoy that kind of itemization. We'll wait and see what Masteros does. Last game around, if I remember correctly, Lund did go Guardian Greaves, but obviously for him it didn't really work out too well. See what Masteros does, whether he wants to go down the same route of the Guardian Greaves build-up. I mean, what other build is there anyway for this hero? Like, I guess you could just put a Defiance and just go... What route do you go down after that?
Kaya Sanj. You could go
Sure.
Kaya Sanj. That's the more popular aggressive build. Up front, amps your damage, gives you stat resist, helps you just become a monster in the front line. There's also the value pickup of the Ag Shard, which we don't see as often. And of course, with Necrophos, if you're snowballing, you could always go Dagon. It's not very common, but you could still just go Dagon, Dagon 5, Reaper's Sight. Pretty much a kill against squishy targets. So it's pretty open. It's just Dagon's an all-in. Requires you to really snowball in lane, so it's not something you tend to see. I think people will gravitate back towards Arcane Boots and Mech into Guardian Greaves with a casual Hood of Defiance. But there is still the potential for Kaya Sanj. It just depends on what you need in the game, whether or not you prioritize healing for your team overall, or just self-tankiness and damage output.
Yeah, fair enough. YG, what do we want now? Like, you want another support? You want a mid laner? Just depends where this laner's going to go. I'm very, very confident it should be a POS 1 Tiny. We saw last game around, YG was more than happy to choose their POS 1 in the first pick phase. That was the Monkey King last game around. I think they might go for another mid laner. And maybe just throw the laner in the support role with the LC. It is a very dominant lane, LC laner. And no, never mind, they're going to go down the IO route. So that is a lot of sustain. I don't know if it's good, John. I think YG's lacking a lot of team fight. And I don't know if they're going to be able to buy enough time for this Tiny to actually snowball. But it's a lot of sustain, that's for sure.
It is a lot of sustain. It does raise the question where the IO is going. We've seen offlane IO multiple times from TI. So they could run offlane IO, mid lane Tiny safe, but you lose the value of Tiny IO in lane.
But was it
that's
good?
The main combination.
I don't think it was good,
So
right?
and so. It was so and so. I don't think it was particularly amazing. It didn't shift the meta. And, OG did get knocked out pretty early, so, it didn't really pan out.
Don't say that too loud, John. People still get very, very upset.
I think the best bet for Yangon right now is to run the IO with the Tiny. So pause 5 IO, run the LC offlane, Chen 4, and play with that sustain. Melt Tower's fast. That's something this lineup does very well. Like, you could tether to Tiny or tether to Lina, and Melt Tower's super quick with the overcharge, and I think that's a way to play. Motivate.Trust, they just go into Terrorblade. This works really well against that lineup. You've got Reflection in lane to hold yourself well. You've got a lot of damage output. You will be susceptible to the Avalanche Toss and the Laguna plays early on, but after 20 minutes. It's not going to be a massive issue once you get a couple of items up. You're going to be tanky enough to hold true. You've got Q to heal you up in the Undying as well. So I think it's a great way to tie up. It's Jackie's special, something he really excels at, and just plays into what Motivate.Trust likes.
And this is the matchup we saw in the TI-10 Grand Finals between Spirit and LGD. Game 5, I believe it was. Mind you, it was Tiny Lycan when it was still broken. But yeah, Tiny versus Terrorblade, obviously more favorable towards the Terrorblade, especially when you've got a great TB player like Yatoro was, and Jackie is a pretty damn good TB player himself. Apart from that, though, John, I just don't see how they're going to lock him down long enough to actually take him out. You got Jewel, but Lun will probably get deleted in that Jewel. Young PH, you pointed it out, they've got a lot of magic damage between him and Hao. Hao's not going to want to max Avalanche Toss early, so kind of throw that out the window. And Young PH, I mean, Lena's great, but is it enough? I don't think so.
Nah, I'm leaning with you here, Mike. I think Motivate.Trust does have the better draft. The sustain play is interesting from YG. I just don't know about Chen. We only saw it once when the Overlord was hot. It did look good, but that's because it was basically a core Chen with Overlord. I think there was like 2 Overlords that game.
Yeah.
They're just playing with a push, and I don't know if that's something you're going to be playing for. And the buffs it received definitely don't play with that, so we'll just have to see how much Zalrain can get out. YG already dropping 1 game here. Motivate.Trust looking good going into it. And you were talking about duel. You can kind of counteract it with Masaros. You get the Ag Shard on Necrophos. You see who's dueled up. Just launch the Death Seeker. It causes them to become ethereal. So they're safe. You just don't get attacked.
That's going to have extra value as well into this Tiny. Like, it's not fun for Hao to be in ethereal form, and I think Masaros, we'll see when he does opt to take out the shards, but it's one of those shards you don't see too often, but I suppose it is.
Look at mid, Mike. Look at mid.
Oh, goodness me.
They planted their banners. They're high-fiving. Motivate.Trust confident.
I mean, what are you going to do, right? Like, with this kind of draft, how are you going to fight them at level 1? You've got, like, well, you got, like, 2 stuns. If LSA is picked up by Young PH, which it isn't right now. And Hal has not got Avalanche, so save from Jackie. Well, there you go. Probably shouldn't talk about the political statements right now, but, you know, good on the boys for shouting out what they believe in.
Absolutely. Yeah. See how it breaks out. Tether is up. They could still try to be aggressive. It's only Jackie contesting top.
Yeah. It'll be a 2 for 2. The teams will just kind of leave it. So let's talk about the laning stage, Sean, because I do feel like Motivate does have some pretty big advantages. Now, this bot lane, Masaros and Setzer, are going to be very annoying to go against. We saw last game around, you did have a Necrophos on the side of YG, and you saw exactly how to deal with it, is the fact that you've got to get aggressive very early on, before he's got that point up in Ghost Shroud, and before that Death Pulse is just doing way too much heal and way too much damage. I just don't know if they're going to be able to apply that sort of pressure with a Chen Tiny duo.
Yeah, it's not as amazing. You see Zalrain does opt for the Persuasion, so he grabs the range creep, just kind of harass back. Early levels for Motivate.Trust is a bit slow. It's just a typical weakness of Necrophos. Level 1 to 2 is a bit weak. Level 3 is when you can kind of self-sustain and harass back with a Death Pulse. That's something that YG can play around. It's just that Setzer is doing a good job of just blocking out camps, preventing any sort of play with Holy Persuasion on these creeps, and without good jungle creeps, you lose out in the early presence of Chen here.
Yeah, I mean, the range creep, it's okay, but it's not like an Enchantress where you get so much bonus damage with the enchant. As Chen, you give the creep a little bit of bonus damage, but overall, unless you get a really nice neutral camp creep, you're not going to be very happy, that's for sure. Over in the mid lane, of course, Young PH against Fearless once again. Young PH should have a pretty big advantage here on the Lina against the Void Spirit. In fact, I believe we've seen this matchup today. Last time around, it did favor the Lina. It is to be expected, but at least for now, Fearless is actually 4 CS ahead of Young PH.
Yeah, that's good news. I think you do have to ride out the early phase of the game here. level 1 to, I guess, 4 is where it feels dicey. Once you're at 5, inching on to 6, you've got enough durability and Resonant Pulse. You can get the value point and Dissimulate if you need to kind of dodge out the spells, and you can start to play tag back with a Remnant. So you just kind of need to focus on the creeps and don't trade too hard with Lina and get what you can. And you do have the early bottle to help the cause for Fearless. So does Young PH, so you're going to be able to juggle around quite fine. The last lane up top, you do have Q on the Undying and Jackie on that Terrorblade, laning up against Lun and Skillay on the IO and LC. So they are running the ILC lane instead. There is some good damage output an LC can do with the overcharge up. Of course, once you have the early point in Moment of Courage, you can try to walk up and use that added attack speed. It's just that the sustain coming out from Q is pretty darn good. Can just turn that strength against you, and, you know, the TB is fairly tanky. Outside of overwhelming odds, right-clicks won't really melt him down.
Certainly not. Lun now going to turn back around onto Q, but he's got the Decay and the Soul Rip back up, so you've got to be very wary of that as Q. Well, now he's completely out of mana, so he can't get the Soul Rip out, but it won't matter. He'll walk out, and in the meantime, Masteros ends up securing First Blood onto Zorain. It's certainly a pretty poor start for YG.
Yeah, it's a very strong start for Motivate.Trust, though, in direct comparison to how that lane went for Necros last time. It's a strong start. Ooh.
Look at this. Skill A trying to cut Q off from denying himself at the tier 2 tower. Gets the miss. Ancients? Oh, they won't get it done. Skill A. His patience and his risky play does end up paying off.
Yeah, it's a nice kill to pick up. He does lose the bounty, so it is cutting off a resource for Young PH. I think Motivate.Trust is still going to be happy with that. He bleeds some gold out to the IO. Not the biggest hero to really bleed gold to, and you just kind of take control of the mid from that. You know, preventing refills for Lina's pretty nice. You get the TP refill for Fearless, so he gets to hold the lane a little bit longer and just play against that Lina while he's still lagging behind slightly. Level 5 on Young PH makes it easier for him to juggle the lane, but Fearless isn't too far off. They are making good use of the Chen creep to deny off Water Rune, so they can kind of balance it back, and that should keep Fearless in check for a little bit longer.
Yeah, Zorain even finds himself a nice courier, so still kind of making work happen, even in a pretty difficult laning scenario for himself. The problem is he's leaving Hao behind, and Hao's not going to have a very good time in that 1v1 matchup. It's not exactly very favorable for Hao, as he might just be dead. Toss back. The one charges, he'll survive. Masteros still getting very aggressive here. Another death pulse out, and that's going to force Skill A to rotate. Meanwhile, in the mid lane, Zorain ends up dropping on the Chen, and Fearless picks up his first kill of the game. And if this was a pub game, John, your mid laner would be very upset with you right now.
They would be. Like, that kill for Fearless does help him catch up. Again, still lagging behind on EXP, but not too bad in CS considering that it's a Lina. So once Fearless gets 6, which he should get after a couple of creeps, it's going to be a lot easier to manage.
Very nice Laguna there. And the Dissimulate just wasn't quite in time to juke out the Dragon Slave, and they do manage to get the kill. So a big pick up there from Young PH. And suddenly that kill on the Chen doesn't really seem to matter quite as much.
And I like seeing this from Zorain. He's taking control of the jungle area near the mid-tier 1. They're trying to set up for an early shove-in with the damage they have on Young PH. Can make the process a little bit quicker. No big creep to take, though. So it's still only this center courser. The magic aura does help in mitigating some of the output of Fearless, though. So it does stall out the pushback.
Jump in. 8th Remnant's there. Set 0 is going to rotate. Got the Hex out, they've got the Earth Spike, and they should have enough damage in the end. In fact, they will. Young PH, he's gone. Fearless, he'll be happy with that. It's again another pretty big weakness about the Chen is when that happens, when one of your heroes get jumped, you really can't do much about it.
No, it just relies so much on these good jungle creeps to have that early presence. And again, he's been stuck with the Centaur Courser. All he's giving is some magic resist, not much else. No control, no sustain to help with, and it's just not giving that early impact for the hero. Perhaps once it hits a few more levels, it gets a higher level persuasion for better creeps, it can start to shape up. It just feels like Motivate.Trust is getting a lot more from these lanes. Like, Masteros is #1 in CS, Jackie #2. Outside of mid, everything's going the way of Motivate.Trust right now.
Yeah, and, I mean, speaking of Lun, he's having a really bad time right now in this LC. Like, it was a great start with the IO combination, but at this point, he's unable to dominate the lane against Jackie. And, well, you see Q, he hasn't really backed out of the lane on the Undying. He understands his role is to ensure that Jackie has the freest time of his life, and that he is allowing this Terrorblade. The Q, he won't mind if he's not getting XP or if he's not getting involved, as long as Jackie's farming. A set 0, bit of an Earth Spike right through the middle of Hao and Skillay, finding neither one. Won't matter too much, but Hao, he'll be very happy with that kill.
Yep, helps accelerate this Tiny. And already level 6, working onto the Echo Saber, so you're about to hit that big spike. You can play around with the IO overcharge. You can hit really hard. You can line up for a push after a fight if you so wish on YG. They just don't quite have that big opening. I think Motivate.Trust, they're going to be okay with losing the line there. They're still giving space out to Masros. He is rushing a Rod of Atos, so that's going to help them with some control. As again, they are kind of lacking stuns outside of the line. This does make it easier for them to lock in the target and just look for that Reaper's Sight opportunity.
Light Strike Array there onto Fearless, but he already got that double damage rune, so expect a bit of a rotation to come out from Fearless very soon with that DD. Like, they're pinging out the bot lane, so they might try to go after Hao on that Tiny. Skillay, he's going to be around, but he's still only level 5, and now the run-in is there. Set 0, can he break the gap? He gets the Hex off on the IO. They'll have to suffice. Not quite the target you wanted, but you'll settle.
Take what you can. It's a lot of time for Young PH to clear out the mid-tier 1. Already all the way down to 113 HP in deny range, so Fearless can just clear it out if he wants to. And looks like he's going to leave it up for just a bit longer. Young PH has been farming quite well. Traveled to rush on Lina. So he's going to be active once that's up.
Fun fact, John. Back in my younger days, I was actually a Chen spammer myself. This is talking, I'm talking 8-9 years ago, right? Especially in Dota All-Stars. And let me tell you, when you have this bad of a start, it's really hard to come back and have any impact.
Yeah, I think that's the issue with Chen. Like, even these slight buffs don't do anything for his late game. Just such a tempo-based hero. The Hand of God heal does not scale particularly well into late game, although I guess the Locket gives you an option to scale just a bit more with added heals, and in conjunction with an IO, I guess the overhealing is pretty good on the tethered target. It's just a very niche play that's going all in that sustain, and we mentioned this in Draft, Mike. We both don't know if that's good enough. I don't think it is. You don't seem to think as well. So I think for YG, with this kind of draft, they do have to play fast, and I think that also requires your Chen to actually hit level 6 to have that Hand of God ready.
Well, I mean, Set 0 has just done such a great job of never giving that small camp away. And Zorain, for the first time, he's finally gotten the Ghost. If he had gotten this in the laning phase, he would have been the happiest man alive. But he had no opportunity to do so, and now he might die again as Set 0 is trying to break the gap. They've got the Hex off, they've got the Reaper Sight available. Do they want to commit it? You bet your ass they do, John. Zorain is going to be sent back as now they even get his creeps. And it just continues to be a very, very difficult time for the man. However, top lane, Jewel is out. Q, he's not going to die to the Jewel. They won't quite have enough, and now, I mean, at least you get a kill onto Hal, but you would have loved that bonus damage if you were Lun.
Yeah, it takes a relocate play as well to get that done. And that does mean they're going to shove in top just a bit, but they do relocate out. They don't fully commit for the shove. Just go back into that jungle. Bot lane being shoved in by Masros is going to be taken out, so it's going to be an equal tower trade. There is time to respond up top as well.
You've got Masros there. He might just be an up. In fact, he's got a Rod of Atos up. And that's something I was asking you about, John, the itemization of the Necrophos. I suppose Masros, feeling like they just need extra lockdown in this game, does go for the Rod of Atos rush.
Yeah, it's nice. It's just a bit hard to use that against an LC. You can dispel it off and press the attack, so you can't really hold well, though.
Yeah, Young PH going to be targeted. Press the attack and a save, but no, not really. They had the finger available. Lun, he's going to try and run with the press the attack. Is it going to matter, though? Probably not, as they will slowly but surely chase him down, and Masros will take his third kill of the game. And I suppose on the brighter side, Hal is able to farm on the Tiny pretty freely right now. But that's about the only bright side you've got going if you're YG. In fact, Zorain, right on schedule, John, is going back to the fountain, it looks like. He will pop the Hand of God, but it will mean nothing.
Yeah, that's a pretty hefty use of the Hand of God to try to save yourself. I think you might have been better off pocketing it for a bigger fight. Mid-tier 1 does fall in the end. Motivate.Trust, 4-9, 3k lead, a much bigger lead early on now for the Thai boys, as they are really getting everything they want. Like this has been a pretty free lane up top for Jackie. Number 2 network, Masaros, has been on a run with Necros. He's gonna have his mech up soon. Isn't a bit of an awkward spot. Oh,
Masaros, he's gonna survive, Ghost Shroud or not. The Laguna wasn't enough, and now an Earth Spike. It lands on 3 heroes, and now they just jump right in. Fearless, he has no fear, this man. He's still so healthy as well. Are they going to jump back in? Jewel is out. Jackie's going to try and help out. The Soul Rip, the Sunder. They're trying to buy time. Fearless, no. He won't quite make it. They were 1 hit away from getting him out, and now maybe the chase is there. Young PH, he's off the mark with the Light Strike. They want Jackie, though. The Terrorblade's so close to dying, and eventually Skill Lay. He'll have enough damage on the IO. And the persistence from YG does pay off, as they get a 3-for-0 trade. And Fearless maybe should have been a bit more fearful, John, as he has cost his team heavily. As in fact, Masaros now has been chased down, but he'll try to turn. Motivate.Trust out. He's got the Reapers, but they've got Skule around. Young PH, you've got to be careful. You're dropping quite low now. But it won't matter, or maybe it will. Aether Remnant is there, but no, they won't have the control all the time for the Reaper's side. Motivate getting punished heavily now in this game too, and YG gonna go for that top tier 1 as now Fearless. Well, we've talked about these pauses, John. A lot of keyboards have been broken today.
That they have. Casualties of war, as you know, a small misplace being punished for Motivate.Trust. I think that kind of stems back to Jackie trying to go for the Sunder play. There's just not enough HP on Fearless to survive, Sunder or not, but all the damage, all the focus YG was tossing onto that duel. So I think if you just cut your losses, back off in the Terrorblade, save your Sunder, that might have been a better story for Motivate.Trust. They do get punished for it. They could try to re-engage. They still have the sight, but YG's still in position to fight.
Q. Kind of AFK for a second there on the Undying. It's still going to be just fine as Fearless connect the Aether Remnant. Motivate thinking about trying to go back in, but YG, I think they're actually quite powerful at the moment. Very nice spike for them in the net worth. I mean, the advantage for Motivate is less than 1k. So it's really anyone's team fight right now. But perhaps you want to try and go before this Hand of God is back up. So again, in conjunction with the IO, the amount of heal you're going to be able to pump out with the press the attack and the Hand of God is kind of ridiculous. And Motivate, they've smoked up, but they're going to be going right into the eye of the storm here. We'll eventually back off to the other side of the map, and well, YG, they just hold their own triangle. Nobody from Motivate's going to be able to catch them out.
They're still sticking around the area, though. They really want this kill. They are committing quite hard. Fearless needs these kills to build into that Ags, but no one's giving an opening, and they just go back. At the very least, Jackie's farming safely bot, so he is starting to build up on that Terrorblade, trying to rush his items out. The same thing is happening for Hao's Tiny, though. So that is a cause of concern. The Shadow Blade's flying in, the BKB's next for Hao. He understands that all he needs to do is stand and fight. The Shadow Blade, the Silver Edge can kind of be delayed. You just need to be able to not get controlled up by the side of Motivate.Trust. And that does mean that the Reaper sight is just going to be tossed on the Tiny once the BKB is revealed, though. So there are still ways for Motivate.Trust to deal with that. It's just not. It's just going to cancel off a lot of their damage, especially in the Void Spirit early on.
Mid lane, still a lot of posturing from both teams. Zorain is going to show himself on this Chen, but they know that someone's behind. In fact, Hao now going to reveal himself as well on the Tiny. That's a much more attractive target that you're looking for, but the problem is, while Skill lays around, and again, with this Chen Hand of God behind him, it kind of feels impossible to actually kill Hao off. Keep in mind, Skill Lay also has the Holy Locket up, so everything's getting amped up. It's a very interesting strategy, but it is making it so Motivate do not feel comfortable to try and burst somebody down. But I suppose in the meantime, as long as Jackie's hitting creeps, you're still pretty happy.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, your Terrorblade, you can hold confidence in how it scales late game. You can use reflection against the Tiny to kind of make him hurt himself as well. So you do have some options to counteract how much farm How is getting. And again, you always have the Reaper site to fall back to for percent-based damage. You just need to find the right target, find that opening, and blast it from there. I think YG's defensive play is really on point, though. They have to be worried about the control down bot. There's a lot of wards watching the spot, and they could catch Zarain out if he's not careful.
Perhaps. Q gonna spot him out, set 0. Oh, here comes the relocate. They've got to run. Flash Golem is popped. They're gonna try, but the jewel is there in time. The LC just looking to burst him down as Fearless jumps in. Nice Earth Spike as well. Set 0. He's bought enough time. Q, he's out of there. Reaper Scythe onto Lun. He's gone on the LC, and now they've just got to back the hell out as YG. So close yet so damn far. Set 0 on this Lion John once again with just an absolute ravage.
Oh, he just saves the day for the team. Top is still being shoved in, but home.
Their skill lay going to be targeted on this IO. Fearless understands. He's going to try and get rid of this IO first, or how is just off target. Juke away, but Finger is there. Set 0. He'll get what they wanted. Problem is they won't have the follow-up now for the tiny kill. And so Hal will walk away freely. Definitely decent news for YG. Problem is in the meantime, Jackie's still hitting creeps quite freely.
He's using his illusions quite well. You know, clearing out multiple camps across the map. Just getting a little bit more gold for himself. The Scotty's almost done. I mean, it's still 2 parts away, but the gold is flowing quite freely, so that's going to be a huge boon for Jackie. More stats means he's not going to be bursted down. Fearless, though.
How for that initiation with the Shadow Blade won't quite be able to find it. And a 2k net worth advantage now for Motivate, John. It does seem like a much closer game than Game 1 was, though, which is certainly great news for us. YG, I mean, they're still well and truly in the running to try and pull this game number 2 off. Again, the big concern is going to be the Terrorblade, but Hal's not too far behind on the Tiny.
Yeah, he's really not. He's got a lot of ways to clear out camps. He's always got the IO backing him up as well. He's always protected playing this far forward. Looks like they might gun for the Roche now. And the side of Motivate.Trust don't really have wards around Pit. And YG's got much better vision gain around the top jungle as well. This could be a very free Roshan, and Motivate.Trust, yeah, they're just not aware.
A very confident play from YG, and it works out for them. Motivate, even without the meta, I think they would have tried to force this fight, but they're not going to get the opportunity now. As Jackie, he sent an illusion in to try and scout out the pit. And he's going to realize too late that it was being taken, so now IG, with the Aegis up on Hal, are going to try and get aggressive. They spotted out set 0 there for a second, but they won't have any way of closing the gap. Still, it's going to buy you at least a few minutes of peace here for Hal to continue his kind of escalation in terms of farm. Hell, he's just about 10 seconds off of buying that shards up on the Tiny as well. So you're well and truly within the power spike now of this POS 1 Tiny. Could be very, very scary times to Motivate.
Yeah, they need to be cautious and play as a team. They are fairly fragmented right now. Again, the focus is mainly on just building up on Jackie, trying to play catch up with Fearless. They do smoke up now and try to pierce from below for the tier 2 defense. That tower's not going to hold for long, though.
Certainly will not. Motivate, they're thinking about it, but you can't really feel the confidence right now as they are going to spawn out Zorain, but Fearless, who are you going to jump on? He'll go onto the LC instead. Lun, he'll get caught out by the 8th Remnant. Meanwhile, on the backside, though, set 0's already gone. They found young PH, though, on the leaner. Now skill lay. He'll be the target they really wanted, and they've got the IO gone. Hal, he's trying to focus down the tombstone, but how do you fight this team fight, Hal? He's just surrounded. I don't think there's any way out. As long as this IO's dead, he is going right to the graveyard. And it looks like YG have gifted even more kills the way of Motivate. As it's about to be a full team wipe. Fearless, he has the 8th Remnant. There's no TPing out. Lun's gone. And this is one timing we didn't really mention, John. Is once you've got the Eye of Skadi on this Terrorblade, it's going to be pretty concerning signs for YG. Because not only do you kite out the Tiny, but you remove so much of the heal amp from this IO Chen LC.
Yeah, it's just all the free farm Jackie had. They never contested the Terrorblade. They knew this timing was coming as well. With how much they didn't see Jackie in these fights, they should understand or have a read on Motivate.Trust that this is the game plan. Just get the Terrorblade big. The stats mean he's impossible to burst down. The healing reduction is big. I think you can still play against that with the Locket. The Locket pretty much counteracts it, so you're not losing regen. You're just losing the bonus. And that means you still get the tether bonus overall. So it's still effective, but it's a lot harder to pull off because of the kiting on the Tiny. So there's a lot of factors now for YG to think about in these engagements. They can't afford to get jumped like that. Their counterplay isn't amazing. I think they have to be the ones being aggressive on YG's side, getting the duels off on the right targets, and forcing the response from Motivate.Trust. That's where YG shines. Not playing into what Motivate.Trust wants. They just don't have the spells to counter-initiate as well. And when they're split up like that, when they lose their Lina off the bat, they lack a way of dealing with the Tombstone. Like, we saw our Tiny. We saw how have to focus the Tombstone on the cliff, which is not ideal. That should be the Lina's job. That should be the Chen's job. And because Lina was just dead so fast, they had no way of dealing with that big issue of control and damage just flying through all the time.
Now Motivate, they want to get involved. Young PH, he's going to TP out. This could be perfect timing to try and force a fight. Fearless, going to find Skill A again, the IO. It's going to be targeted immediately in Reaper Scythe, just in case. In fact, now Fearless, he's found the Tiny, which is going to force the buyback out from Skill A. And Motivate, that should be enough for him. What is it? Still posturing very aggressively. Jackie, he's around with the meta up. They can still force a big team fight. Jules gonna come out. They found Set Zero. Masaros trying to break the gap to help out. He gets the mech in time. Set Zero.
Oh,
he's
no.
not gonna drop. He will be just fine as now the LC. Lun, he's gonna go down. Skill 8 died back immediately as well on the IO. Jackie picks up both kills. And I believe it's tier 2 tower time.
They take the top tier 1. They can swing mid if they want to.
Uh-oh. Set Zero on this line. He's been a real nuisance so far. Fearless, the rest of the team going to move in. They still have the meta up. They've got the Lion down, but what does it matter if you're going to lose both your mid and your safe lane? And that's exactly what's going to happen. And I got to tell you, John, I'm going to give props to Set Zero this series. He's been doing a real fantastic job. He's basically set up everything for his team.
Oh yeah, he's been all over the map. He's secured their lanes and just gets the activity going for everyone. Like, he's been on point with his rotations as a support. And YG, it's getting hard for them to play against this. Like, they still forced the fight into a line, knowing that they had no outpost control. There was a TP point for Motivate.Trust to come into. They did not have the tether to counteract the Scotty from Jackie. Without the IO, like, the Scotty does a lot of work. Like, the Hand of God just barely did any healing onto young PH. And that's the value of the Chen towards late game. If you're not getting that burst healing because of the Scotty and because you don't have IO, then the Chen really just tapers off hard. Like, there is almost no value to the hero, it feels like. It's just tied in so much with his timing. To make matters worse, it's a level 1 Hand of God. We're not seeing a level 12 Chen yet, so it's only a 275 heal. He needs level 12 to have a little bit more impact.
Jackie, they're going to try and burst him down. While the meta's not up, Laguna is there. Soul Rip going to keep him healthy for a little bit. No, Jewel is there in time. They will not be able to get the Sunder off. Nice jump in from Lun. And now Masaros can be chased down on the Necrophos. And they should be able to find him. Or will they? I mean, they haven't got the greatest lockdown still. But the toss is there onto young PH. But no, the jump back in, the re-engage. Fearless, he's in onto Skill A. But they don't have the damage output. Set Zero's gone. Masaros, he'll get the Reaper Sight. But it's still not enough to kill off this damn IO. In fact, they'll just keep going. Onto Q, they'll find the Undying. Fearless, he does finally kill off Skill A. But what's it going to cost them? He'll try to run. Eventually, Hal will have his way with him. It's a fantastic team fight here from YG. Really just kind of great presence of mind to try and force the fight when Motivate weren't ready for it.
Yeah, they streamed in 1-by-1 and Motivate.Trust. And YG, they get a full team wipe out of nowhere from Motivate.Trust, kind of responding in a staggered manner. You will be able to try to gun for this tier 2 mid. Fortify does clear out the creep wave. Not going to be a problem when you've got a Tiny with the Silver Edge up and the attack speed he does have. They even out. They get a little bit more control on the map and even out the lanes just a bit. Motivate.Trust has to respect the counterplay of YG. Like, if they do isolate your heroes one by one, of course they're going to have the damage to deal with you. You need to stick together as a team. You need to protect Jackie. YG starting to get more damage sources now as well, Mike. They've got the Silver Edge up on Young PH, so the Lena's hitting hard now as well. That gives you 2 potential tether targets for the overcharge. 2 really big scaling cores now, and Motivate.Trust, and they still have answers, but you do not want to give openings like this when you have to deal with a Tiny and a Lena towards the late game.
How? Some very deep wards here from Set0 in the top lane. I think they may have seen him. Maybe not. Oh, jump in, Set0. He's got the Tiny controlled up as they will go after the IO instead, but skill lane, no, he does finally drop. How now? Rod of Atos out. Masros gonna join in, and How? He's just completely surrounded. There's no way out for him. No Reapers available. Are they actually gonna just drag this out? Oh, they are. They're gonna let the zombies do the job, or maybe just wait out the Reaper's scythe. How? He's trying to run. Reapers, it's available, but Masros, he won't even bother. He'll just take the kill. And I do believe they were waiting for the Reaper's scythe, but Masros accidentally goes for the right click.
That's something else. They stalled the fight out for like 8 seconds, only for Masros to ruin it for himself at a right click. Well deserving of tips. They're going to be able to clear out the top tier 2, no problem. And without the Tiny, that's going to give them a bit of a window where they want to play. Roshan is up. They do scout it out, so likely going to get that objective first. Aegis Shard, Roshan number 2. Shouldn't take them too long. Metamorphosis is still available as well for the follow-up fight. And again, because they didn't reuse the site, they've got that as well. So they can just go in. I guess that's the big brain play for Masros. It's like, oh, you think I'm going to use Reapers? I'm going to save it for this next fight. That's it.
I mean, the thing is, Johnny, there wouldn't be a next fight if you used the Reaper scythe. I mean, 35 seconds additional respawn time. It would have just been a guaranteed free Roshan. Nevertheless, it's not going to matter. It's still a very free Roshan for the side of Motivate.
Dire's bottom tower is under attack.
That'll be enough for him. Aegis up, shards up.
Oh.
Sort of Atos onto the dominated creep by the Chen. There's a bit of gold there for the side of Motivate. Young PH bot lane. I mean, on this laner, he hasn't had the most impact this game. Still very high in net worth, but it just hasn't kind of translated to many kills on this laner. But a rather tough time for him. And now with a 7k net worth deficit, I still don't think they're out of the game by any stretch here, YG, but it is going to cost them some pretty good high ground defenses to pull this one back, I think.
Yeah, their AoE control for high ground isn't particularly amazing. It's not like last time where they had Monkey King. They had a little bit more AoE with a Storm and the Ags Vortex coming on. This time around, they've got Avalanche Toss, they've got LSA, and that's all their team fight for high ground. And I guess overwhelming odds to clear out the creep wave. It's going to take a lot of effort to stop this. Whereas for Motivate.Trust, they could just drop Tombstone, cut off the initiation, keep clearing out, keep healing up with Necros, and just slowly chip away here.
Well, break is there. They're going to jump in now with Hal. Toss back. Lun, he's got the jewel up. He will throw it out. Can they keep him alive? Soul Rip was committed, but it's not. Oh, Jackie! He's going to survive. They can't kill him off.
It's the shard.
It's the shard. The Sunder was there. The shard from Masros with the Ethereal, just keeping him alive. And Jackie, he had the Aegis anyway. They'll try again. Break is there, but Set0 now, he's in with the Hex. They'll make the jump in onto Hal. They'd love the Tiny. Masros, he's dropping quite low, but not quite low enough. In fact, Finger, Reaper's Sight, everything being committed, and Hal is down for 100 seconds without buyback available. Zorain, he can't even move. He'll just accept the fact that he is going to die, and Jackie, they'll move on to the next lane of barracks. Young PH can only get so close right now. I mean, if Jackie hits you once, the slow might just be enough to take you down. In fact, Rod of Atos is going to be out on skill lay. But they completely ignore the heroes. They know how much time they have for these megas. Without Hal being around, And this should be Megas coming out, unless YG are going to try and force the fight. Does feel like they might need to, but Fearless, he'll do it instead. He jumps in with the 8th of Remnant, catching out Lun, and they should have more than enough. In fact, never mind that, they found young PH instead. But no, nice relocate. Does actually get young PH out of there. But it's the same kind of story. They're still without their +1 Tiny.
Radiant's top tower is
Yeah, it's just such a slow defense.
Oh, what an 8th of Remnant.
PH?
Checks the tree line, finds young PH, forces the BKB out. Jackie, he's going to force the fight anyway. Meanwhile, Jewel does nothing against Q, because again, the Ethereal was there from Masteros, and now Lun, he's between a rock and a hard place. He's got nowhere to go but down. 10 seconds, though, for how to be back up to rejoin this team fight. Jump in again, though. Young PH has been caught out. Lun, he'll commit the buyback. Try to ensure that this Lina does survive. And the barracks, they are still up. Laguna out. They've got the Aegis perhaps, and they do. Be one life. Can they find a secondary? Break is there. They'll try to slow him down as much as they possibly can, but Z0, he's going to jump back in with the Hex out. How? He'll keep trying to force this with the Tiny. A nice toss back on a Jackie, but he has the Sunder. In fact, he pops the Satanic just in case. And now Masteros, he's going to jump in. Jewel is there. They've got Jackie, but do they have the damage? Not with that Ethereal. Masteros again, making the Jewel worth absolutely naught. As Lun, he's gone down with the dieback, and now Hal's been caught out. But with the Invis, he is safe. Unfortunately, I can't say the same for Zorain. The toss back, though, into the fountain. Jackie, will he finally die? Not quite. They have the Soul Rip. They have the Sunder. And he'll just walk away once again. In fact, Z0 again onto the IO. They've got another kill underneath their belt. Skill lace gone. Masteros, he wants to go for a fountain dive. Young PH about to get shredded by Jackie. In fact, Hal, he'll be the target instead. There's your Reaper Scythe, and young PH, he's not going to escape either. A full team wipe. The GG was called anyway. And Motivate.Trust managed to pull off the 2-0 victory.
Yeah, they do it in spectacular fashion for Motivate.Trust. It looked a little bit closer this time around, like there were more avenues for Yangon to play with. They managed to get some punishment off onto Motivate.Trust a couple of times, but it just wasn't enough. They were banking on this overheal sort of lineup, right? A sustained lineup with Chen, with Io, even to an extent, the Legion Commander. It just wasn't enough. Like, we are seeing the shortcomings of Chen when you focus on that aspect, right? I think the big thing with Chen is you have to be able to use it early game as well. You have to be able to use those enchanted creeps to run down lane, to kind of set up a winning condition from your safe lane. Yeah. But Set0 did such an amazing job blocking the camps that early impact for Chen wasn't there. And it all just boiled down to Hand of God. And at that point, like the Scotty was up on Jackie. If you didn't have Tether on you, Hand of God wasn't healing you at all. So unfortunate for Yangon, they did try something unique. It doesn't pay off, and Motivate.Trust looking a lot stronger in that second game. Like Masteros, I guess, just showing off what the Necrophos can do when it does get a good start, and did manage to just win out in a strong fashion against YG.
It certainly did. Now, of course, YG, they are coming back for our final series. I believe they are going to be up against Army Geniuses, which is a team that we haven't had the pleasure of watching for a while, so looking forward to seeing how this matchup goes. You've got to give credit to Young Gun, because we've casted them a couple times throughout different events, and they did look much stronger, at least in this series in Game 2. I didn't really believe in the draft, but they made it look a lot better than what I assumed it to be. And I'm looking very forward to seeing how they do against Army Geniuses here in our final series of the night. And of course, we are going to head to a short, well, it's going to be a 20-minute break, so not so short, but we'll be right back after that 20-minute break to see if YG can turn their day around against AG, or whether AG are going to have their way with them. See you all again very soon.